I'll get you to do is introduce yourselves. So, Kimmy, if you could introduce yourself first, and then Nicola.
Kimmy, I am 54 today. And yeah, I have Moya Moya and had surgery and all that jazz and what goes along with it.
Nicola?
Nicola.
Hi, I'm Nicola. I'm mum of a Moya Moya warrior and I'm founder of Moya Moya Australia.
Yes. Isn't she fantastic?
I suppose for the listeners out there, like I got to be honest, I had never, and I like to consider myself a relatively well person. I'd never heard of this disease. So I'll get you to explain what it is.
Moya Moya disease is a disease of the brain, and what it does is it causes the arteries of the brain to stenose, or in English language it means that they narrow and they go hard and they can split or they can block the brain. And the brain, being the incredible piece of equipment that it is, sends little capillaries out around where the blockage is and creates a new pathway for that blood to flow. So if you were to see Moya Moya disease on an MRI, it actually looks like smoke. So the word Moya Moya is Japanese for puff of smoke. They were the first people to record it. Originally, it was thought to be mostly in an Asian type genetic system, but now it's coming more and more prevalent everywhere.
Yeah.
And it's my understanding is it's a genetic thing. Like there's no vector that we know of. Is that correct?
Yes.
It can be genetic, but there's also in our case, we don't know why Jed has got it.
No,
so
I don't know.
You don't know either, Kimmy?
No, I think like when I was younger and smaller, everybody said that I was clumsy because I always dropped things all the time, and probably still do. But you sort of look back over your life and you think, oh, maybe there was little signs there. But I got diagnosed in 2010, but I had my first stroke when I was 20 years ago, 2004. No, 2004 I had my first stroke. Yeah. So that was my whole left-hand side.
Yeah.
But they actually thought I'd thrown a clot from my heart in Cairns. So yeah, they didn't look into it any further because that's what they thought it was. But all the brain, like, you know, how it splatters, Nick, and all these parts are dead on the right, it's affected the left. Yeah.
Right. And how do you experience it, Kimmy? Like, if you could, as best as you can, tell us. The stroke and the subsequent Moya Moya. Like, what's it?
Yeah.
How does it affect your perception?
I think that when I got diagnosed in May, and after a few mini strokes, I knew the signs. That's where the blood vessels, actually those little ones that branch out, like Nicola said, they actually start popping because they can't carry the blood. There's nowhere for the blood to flow through the brain, as I understand it. And so I had the diagnosis in Brisbane and got sent to Sydney. I watched the surgery on the internet in an American website. It was a Mayo Clinic or something, and I watched the brain surgery because I had to have it on both sides. So STA, MCA bypass, where they took the thickest, juiciest vein, because you've got two that on each side that feed the temple and the scalp, sorry, not the temple. And they took the thickest, juiciest one and rerouted it on each side so I'd have more blood flow, because mine's blocked. My brain is actually blocked in the middle cortex, and I'm one of the ventricles on the way into the neck. So yeah, and I've had strokes on both sides now. But so I watched the short story is I watched the surgery, and before I had it on a video, and I thought, wow, because when someone's going to operate on your brain, I think you need to actually see it. I'm one of those people that like to know what's coming, what's going to go on. So yeah, and I had it in Sydney, so I was very lucky, but for them to pick it up, I think, and have a great doctor. I think Jed had Professor Studley.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I had Nazi Assad, which is in the same rooms as him.
Oh, there you go.
Wow.
Yeah.
These amazing people, I mean, brain surgeons. It's
Oh,
kind
I
of
know.
weird.
And you know what his hobby was?
What?
Like aneurysms and strokes. Wasn't like golf. Wasn't like golf or anything.
What do you do in your downtime? Oh, I work.
Yeah. I just study aneurysms and Moya Moya.
Yeah. I mean, well, thank
But
God.
no, I think it affects everybody differently, Moya Moya. I went through the surgery really well and everything. And after the first one, I started having seizures, which Moya Moya can progress into. I had one big seizure a week before the surgery, so they don't know whether it's because of the surgery or I got to the stage where I started having seizures, sort of thing. So, but yeah, I think everybody that is diagnosed or has surgery handles things totally different. And you've got to have a really positive mindset, I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
How does it affect your perception and memory and like your day-to-day activities?
I had to, after the surgery, I had to when I had the first stroke, like I had to get walking and everything again. And I got back to driving and that. And then when I got diagnosed after the mini strokes in 2010, what did you just, my memory and everything. So I had to relearn. I know when I come home, because we were in Sydney, so I spent like 8 weeks down there. And I couldn't work out how to use the washing machine.
Yeah.
I'm left-handed, so I had to learn to read. My husband was great because he is great, as husbands are. But when I was in hospital, he actually started buying me books because I love to read, and it was difficult to start reading, and I'd only like read a few lines at a time. But I had to like teach myself to read again, sort of thing, where I could finish a book in a day. It took me, like a week or whatever. And yeah, I had to like relearn stuff. Being left-handed, like I joined darts. I had to teach myself right-handed to play darts. Things like that, like ironing, I do right-handed. I crochet right-handed, things like that. So it's basically relearning those pathways and rebuilding them, I think, for me.
Does it affect your personality and your and like, the way that you perceive the world?
I think, yes, it does definitely affect not your actual core personality, because I think that always stays, but I think it affects, like, I'm not allowed to drive anymore. I am not. I can be seizure free for 6 months and then I'll have a small seizure. So, and my eyesight, peripheral vision, isn't great. So, not allowed to drive. I don't work. When I first come out of the surgery and everything, I think that I thought maybe I didn't try hard enough to go back to work, but I've accepted that that's not the case. I think I've, done my best.
Yeah. Absolutely. And look, obviously the person who's, suffering the disease itself is the person suffering it the most, but clearly there are implications for friends, loved ones, family, support networks. And that's where you come in, Nicola. So you're the mother of Jed, and you've written an awesome book, The Thing About Jed, which I seriously, I've just finished reading. And I really, really recommend, actually. I'll stick all the hyperlinks and everything there. It's a fantastic read and a short read. But look, would you mind running through, I know this is a big question, but I'm going to leave it broad so you can focus on what you want to, what happened to you with, your story with your son's diagnosis, Jed's diagnosis of this disease, and the, frankly, nightmare that kind of led after that, and the positives and the negatives, and then we'll kind of like go into how it changed you as a person.
Well, sure. The thing that people say to me all the time is that children don't stroke, and that's not my experience. Kids do. And I remember very early one morning having been, mother to a newborn and a child that didn't sleep and all the other stuff that happens when you've got a baby. One particular morning, he was going through a particularly uncomfortable period, and I started to notice his face was twitching. And it started to go further through his face, and it started to go down his arm, and then it started in his leg. And the only way I could try and settle him was to get him in some warm water in the bath. I sort of watched him for a few minutes, and I thought, you've got to get something done here. So I called 000, called my mum, just called 000, called my husband, just called 000, and we were taken down to Cairns Base Hospital, which turned into a period of us being in hospital and then sent down to Brisbane. We were told that he'd had a stroke, but was just one of those things, just a bump in the road, and maybe, you can go home and get on with your life, and that's the end of it. But then it happened again about a year later. So we got on the treadmill very young, and it took some years for them to actually put Moya Moya to what was happening with Jed. I can clearly recall sitting in the doctor's rooms where there was people coming and going, and, people on chairs researching, and I had Jed at my feet playing with a toy, and my sister-in-law was with me, and the doctor said to me, he has Moya Moya disease. And I suppose, Kimmy, you're the same. When you're going through something like this, it's almost out of body.
Yeah.
I can remember saying, is this going to kill him? And I was told no, that it wouldn't. So we sat on that diagnosis for a year before somebody started to understand that this is perhaps bigger than what we knew we were dealing with. We were sent down to Sydney, where we met the magnificent Marcus Stoodley, who's the first time I met Marcus, I was in bed asleep. I had hair like crazy, like I'd been dragged through a hedge backwards. And he came in, and very early in the morning, the hospital was dark, and I looked up, and there's this handsome blonde man, and I said, "Are you God?" So he has become a bit of a godlike figure to us. He's a very dear friend of the Baker family now, and so he has done Jed's surgery. Jed's quite complicated because not only does he have it in his brain, he also has Moya Moya in his renal arteries. That's Marcus. There we go. So Jed's got it in his renal arteries. So his first surgery was actually a renal artery bypass. The second surgery was one side at the front, the third was the other side at the front, and the fourth was both sides at the back. So Jed's got quite the smack of Moya Moya disease. But, in the days when it was at its worst, we weren't expecting primary school. Now we're planning a 21st birthday party. So, we're doing stuff. We're doing good stuff.
You've skipped over a a fair bit in there, Nicola, and I get that, but so he was 4, I think, when he had the second bout of surgery, and here are some of the photographs from the book. Do you want to talk us through, as I show these images? Do you want to talk us through that?
Those top two there is when he had his renal artery bypass. The scar still is there. He likes to tell people that it's his crocodile bite.
That's what my dad does. He's got this awesome big scar on his leg, and he tells everyone it's a crocodile bite. Oh my God.
Yeah, he's very proud of that crocodile bite, and taller than me now, but the scar is still as wide as it shows up there. So the one underneath is his first brain surgery. So with kids, because their brains are a lot more finely, intricately developed, they can't actually take the arteries to the source to the position that it's needed. So they actually have to lay the artery across the top of the brain, and the brain goes, woohoo, there's the blood, I'm going to put it where I want. The problem with that is that it's very less invasive, but it takes about 3 months for that blood flow to get to where it needs to go. So shortly after this surgery, he actually had another stroke, and similar to Kimmy, his peripheral vision on his left-hand side was quite adversely affected. So,
I said that there.
you know, those days were days that just keep swimming. The mantra from Dory, the fish, is in my head all the time looking at those photos. And Jed, just to throw an added, there's some more of his first and second brain surgeries, and he had something called emergence delirium as well. So he was in ICU pulling out every piece of tube that was attached to him, catheters, cannulas, the whole works. So it was quite traumatic for him and for us.
Yeah.
So you'd wake up, he'd wake up from these you know, really delicate surgeries and just start pulling stuff out. It's like kind of undoing all the good work. And understandably why, like you said, it's just a trauma response thing. Like people,
Yeah,
I've seen it actually. People just can't help it.
they can't. He's actually known as the crocodile by the Sydney Children's Hospital intensivists. So they eventually decided to not wake the baby, leave the baby sleeping.
Right.
That's one of the things I think too, Nicola, is even when I got diagnosed and had the surgery and everything, and I joined Moya Moya, World Moya Moya, and then there you started Moya Moya Australia, is I thought, wow, look at all the little babies and the kids. And I thought, well, I've lived a lot of life. Do you know what I mean? And I think those kids, I'd rather give them my brain or my veins than them have to go through that, you know, because I've lived a lot of life. So yeah, kids
being a mum, you know,
that would be difficult.
Every parent will say to you, if I could take that pain away from you, then I'd swap with you. One of the choices that I made for Jed when we were going through the surgery is, I thought to myself, I don't know if he's going to survive today. So the last thing I want him to know is fear. I don't want him to see me crying and rocking in the corner, because that's what I felt like doing.
Yeah.
And I've got choices to make, you know, there's kids watching everything that I do. So let's get silly, you know, he got on my back. We both had the hospital robes and the hat, and there we were galloping through the theatre rooms, and all of the surgeons could hear this sound of this little baby giggling as he's going into major brain surgery. And, you know, he remembers going off to sleep. He remembers getting the gas mask on. He was with Buzz Lightyear. The Wiggles are up in space. You know, that's when I wanted him to have his last conscious thought, if that was what was going to be. So I can fall apart any other time, you know?
Yeah,
Not in front of him.
No.
And sorry, go ahead, Kim.
It's the support you have around you too, like that sort of vibe and that positiveness, like my husband was, you know. I treated it like a job and said, yep, got to do this. I have one really good best friend that has stuck with me all the way through it. And I think, you know, you get to see, well, you wake up, I think, that the people that stick by you, because a lot of people don't know what to say to someone with a brain disease.
That's it.
And because you haven't got a broken leg or you haven't got a bandage on your head, I look totally normal. Mm-hmm. And they take you for granted in the sense that, because they think, oh, you're all right, there's nothing wrong with you. And you don't sort of let them see you have a bad day either. My husband knows, and one of my best friends, because they've seen me at my worst. Mm. But others don't know. So they're standing beside you and saying, oh, you haven't seen someone for a long time. Oh, gee, you look great. Oh, you've come through. Everything's so great. And yeah, but inside, oh, my brain's going 100 miles an hour. I might be having a little seizure, you know, because you're excited. When I get excited and stuff, I have little seizures, or I have big ones. I have all types. So yeah, and you find out who those friends are and who are the real people in your life, I think. For me and my personal journey, I'm really a go-getter. So I won't just sit down, roll up in the corner and say, oh, gee, I'm sick, I've got Moya Moya, or I'm having a seizure, I'm having a bad day. I get up every day and I still take life by the balls. You know, I'll have a bacon day, but I might be cooked for a couple of days, or, you know, I still go swimming and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Then somebody says to me, oh, but oh, you should sit down. You shouldn't do that because I've got other medical issues going on as well, not just Moya Moya. And I say, well, no, I'm feeling pretty good. You know, I'm going to do what I like, really.
That's
and
it.
I know that I can push myself to a certain limit, and I say, okay, pull back. When I first got sick or crook, I didn't do that. I pushed beyond that, and yeah, I paid for it. So I know how far I can go now.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can't curl up in a ball. You've got to have that positive mindset and say, okay, you know, keep going, keep getting out of bed every day.
It's all about your choices, Kimmy, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because I think it's important to acknowledge grief, because grief is something that happens when it happens with this disease. You know, you know that you've had this loss.
You grieve for the person.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. But you've got to sit with that and acknowledge it, talk to it a little bit and give it a bit of a poke. I think that's important for your own mental health issues because, you know, God knows I've got some problems that I have to deal with. But the worst thing I think we can do is, as a person dealing with someone with disability or having that disability ourselves, is to not acknowledge the pain that we're feeling. So, you know, my modus operandi is if I feel like today is going to be a bad day, I will happily pull the doona over my head and say, stop, I'm getting off. But what's important from then is the next day, you say, okay, well, the choice is, do I sit and wallow, or do I say, I'm going to get up and I'm going to do one thing today, and then I'm going to do one more thing, and then I'm going to do one more thing? Because at the end of the day, my situation is that there's 3 young people in my house, and they're watching everything that I do. So I want them to see me have grief and acknowledge that, but also make a choice, move forward and do what fills my cup.
I had a friend who was going through a loss that they suffered a death, and speaking to the priest about it afterwards. You know, this person kind of expected to get the, hey, you know, stiff upper lip, you can push through. And there is a time and a place for that. And the priest, to his credit, articulated that. But he said, he goes, I want you to go home and I want you to mourn for 3 days. I want you to weep. I want you to tear your clothes. I want you to feel that grief. I want you to like get right into it. And funnily enough too, because like you were saying that before, Nicola, I want you to have a conversation with it. Like tell that grief how you feel. And pray, like, you know, tell God how you feel, you know, express the sense of injustice that you feel, express all of those things, like do it.
Oh, sometimes I still break into tears and I think, you know, for instance, my husband's been wanting to buy me a scooter, you know, the 2-wheel kind, electric, an e-scooter. So I finally got one and was really nervous, but fantastic. But when we went to buy the helmet, I wanted one of the cool skater helmets, you know, because I want to look cool chick, and even at my age. But the fellow in the bike shop said, oh no, they offer no protection. So I had to get this dorky one, but it's got Kevlar in it, so that if I fall off, because I've got no holes where they've done no bone where they've done the surgery. So if I fall over and something sticks in there, I'm a bit stuffed. I'll probably die on the side of the road. But yeah, so it was this dorky helmet that, you know, I don't look great in, but it's got the Kevlar. And we got in the car, I bought it, I said, yep, okay, got in the car, burst into tears, because I said, why can I have not what I want?
Yeah.
So I still have those days and those times. But I have been seeing a psychologist. Well, we used to live in Toowoomba. So we're up north now, we're about half an hour from where Nicola is in Atherton. And I still have a psychologist that does phone appointments for me now.
Yeah.
The other thing I think I should bring up from a perspective is coming from Toowoomba, which is not far from Brisbane or Sydney, and the health system up here. And to see a doctor is just like, I cannot believe that we don't have the doctors up here and the medical facilities that we need, not just for Moya Moya, but for everybody.
Yeah. Everything's in the southeast corner. Yeah.
We
And
do
it's-
have telestroke coming. We do have telestroke on its way. Thank
That's
goodness for
good.
that.
But look,
That's excellent.
on that, I'm going to ask a really direct question in regards to, because we've seen the photographs of Jed there. So I suppose I'll start with you, Nicola, and Kimi, if you can have a think about this while Nicola is talking. So you were there with your son seeing these drill holes. I mean, that's what they are in his head, and seeing these terrible scars, and just to kind of like really hammer the point. I suppose I should bring it back up.
Yep.
But it's like, so a mother is seeing her son like this. Like, how do you suffering is bad, and it would be better if we didn't go through it. But I've read the book, and it gave you some insights. If you wouldn't mind discussing some of the insights that enduring all of this suffering gave you, and whether or not you think, strange question, it was worth it.
Going through an adventure like that, do I wish that I hadn't? Yes, I do wish that Jed was the same as everybody else. But his journey and my subsequent experiences have made me, I've always been fairly philanthropic. I've always been interested in helping other people, but I think the adventure that I've been on with him has given me my purpose. So whilst before I heard the name Moya Moya, I'd never heard of it before. I didn't understand babies could stroke. I thought stroke was an old person's thing. I never understood what that meant. But when we were going through this disease at the early stages, we didn't have the social media that we've got now. We didn't have the support that we needed. We couldn't talk to anybody. I didn't have Kimi living half an hour away from me. And it was really lonely. We met a couple that were from the Northern Territory who just happened to be there and having their surgeries a week before. So I formed a friendship with her. And then I started to put my feelers out for other people. It was after some other significant moments in my life that I said to myself, well, you've got one life here. You've got a thing that you want to do. You've got to do it today, because you've got to get up and do the best that you can do, leave the best mark that you can. And it drove me. So that's when I set up Moya Moya Australia. We set it up for 3 different reasons. The first was to give people like Kimi and people like me the opportunity to talk to other people that are going through a similar experience, whether that be the warrior themselves or the parent or carer. We wanted to talk about Moya Moya and raise the profile, because even if you were to go to your local GP and say, have you heard of this disease? I can bet you, unless they've heard of me, they haven't heard of it. And we also wanted to give our members the feeling of belonging. And so that's why we've got things like the merchandise, the shirts and things, so that they can wear it and they can know they're part of a very special, very strong, and I don't want to say privileged, but just very special family where we are Australia-wide. So that's what his experiences has given me. But then moving forward, I've just said to my husband this morning, I've looked at my business plan for when I first started Moya Moya Australia, and every single one of those goals has been kicked. So I've got to come up with something else now. Sort of re-establish and keep telling that story and keep sharing the word. Every new person that's heard of Moya Moya disease is another set of ears that can tell somebody else. And thereby we would be aiming to get faster diagnosis, earlier diagnosis, and less risk of stroke. So Kim, Jed having strokes, if we'd known about that this is what was happening, then maybe we could have done a lot less damage to what we've done.
I think so. The education on stroke is got to be out there, especially in children.
Yeah.
As a mother, I think you would have went through it, and of such a young baby and a mother of 3, you would have a different perspective than what I probably do. Or do you know what I mean? As the mother.
Yep.
Yeah. But it's different. It's different to hear your thoughts and insights. It's great. Yeah.
It's
Well, not-
valuable because, like, people ask me all the time, does Jed feel like this? And I don't know. He can't articulate. So with his damage that he's sustained, he's around about 7, but he's got the most incredible pain threshold. I mean, really can put up with a lot of stuff. So he can't tell me how it feels. So the other side of it is true, Kimmy, and that I can hear what people like you say, and I think, I wonder if that's what Jed's been feeling.
But Kimmy, I'll just get you to explain for the listeners, like having endured all this suffering personally, like firsthand.
Yeah.
How has it changed you as a person? And both for the negative and the positive, and what's it taught you? And do you think it was worthwhile, kind of stuff?
Oh, definitely worth it. To have the surgery. I think that's one of the biggest decisions that you probably have to make as an adult. And because when you're a child or a little baby, parents will, it'd be a big decision for them, but they would weigh it up, very much so. But I just said, yeah, I'll do it. I'll give it a go. And it's a serious thing because you can die under surgery. They're operating on your brain. You can have major stroke and then you're locked in and you might be a vegetable. So it wasn't just say, oh yeah, I'm going to have some brain surgery next week. I think it's changed my perception on the little things matter. The little things like me getting up in the morning, my husband getting up to go to work, and him making me a cup of coffee every morning when he's home, because he does work away. I loved work. I didn't do it just for the money. I loved going to work and being able to drive. They're my 2 biggest things that I will miss ever. As having Moya Moya, you could be in a room with 100 people and still feel alone.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Because they see someone like me or like Jed, because Jed, anyone with Moya Moya looks absolutely normal, except for some of the Down syndrome children that that look different, but they also have Moya Moya. And, they say, oh yeah, you're all right because you look the same and your face isn't dropped and they can't see the scars. I shaved my head in a protest a fair few years ago now, and my husband didn't realise I'd shaved it, and he come home from work and he could see all my scars on my head and holes in my head and from the surgery, and he was just devastated because it took him back to the time when I went through all that, and he come with me on that journey. So, yeah. And yeah, I see people. I think I've got to read people a lot too. Yeah.
So more than just the surgery, like what's caused, obviously the root cause of all this surgery and all this change of perspective is the disease itself. So I mean, how I want to word this properly. What was the insights? Sorry, have the insights you've gained from suffering this disease and going through it? Is it worth, like, would you change it? Would you change?
No, I wouldn't change it. I would not change one single second for what I've learned, what I've gained as a person, and how I see the world.
Wow.
I would not change it one little bit at all.
It's kind of, I find that very moving. But the other thing is, like, it's one of the great things about Northern Vibe is, I get to talk to a lot of people like this.
Yeah.
And I have spoken to people who have endured incredible suffering comparable with what you've gone through. Sarah Sexton is that's a fantastic interview, one of my really, really early ones. A lady who had another just terrible, brain disorders. But I've seen this consistent theme where people go, okay, the pain was bad and all that kind of stuff, but the insight was worth it. And that's almost inconceivable to us now living in the Western world, living in Australia, where, like, we're just so pain and suffering avoidant. like this conceptual framework, understanding that suffering has meaning and point and can be good. Like that's mind-blowing. And that's so anti the way we think now. You know what I mean?
Oh, it is. And people, I think that society and social media, though, I think that so much bullshit, if I can say that, is just through television, social media and everything. They don't ever, truth is, you know, if you're dying or you've got something really bad, like Jed or I have, or any other Moya Moya patient or someone that's dying, truth, that's all you want is the truth. You don't want people to lie to you, you know, in the sense, whether it be medically or in a conversation. You just want to, you want the truth. You want someone, oh, gee, you look nice today. I love that dress. You can still be truthful without being hurtful to someone. You know what I mean? Like, but yeah, you can go through, the pain goes by the wayside. Like, you can be in so much pain, which I have, and I'm sure Jed has had a lot of pain, and days where you still, your head thumps and all the scar tissue around your surgery sites ache, and you know, you think, oh, I'll wait a little while to take a Panadol osteo because that's all I can take with my other medication I'm on. And then, oh, that doesn't work, so you put a heat pack on, you know, like that goes by the wayside by what you learn about who you are and the way you look at the world, I think.
Wow.
There's real value in trauma and the lived experience in terms of when you've been through something like we've been through. And so I know you've read my book, Matt, so you can see where my experience with Jed led on to me being able to help my friend Nicole when she needed it the most. And mostly that was the don't want her to see fear in these moments when she's critically injured. And so, you know, that sort of thing also stood me in not good stead because it wasn't good experience, but when my nephew lost his fight with rare cancer. So, you know, the experiences of those three things were not pleasant and remain unpleasant and will always be unpleasant. They have value added to my sense of purpose and my sense of self. And it's something that until you've actually been through a journey like that, that you can't quantify the value of your life. For example, I see one of the ones that social media, Kimmy, that gets under my goat is when people say FML, which is F my life, because something has happened. Well, that's what it means. Don't use it for anything other than that. Well, don't use it at all, actually. I see people, young people, put that up, mostly young people, and I think, I don't know how you can disrespect your life so much. You are here. You've got one life. You've got one mark to make. Go and make it, you know. But unfortunately, that's that lived experience that's the one that's the motivator for a lot of us.
Sorry.
I think they should be taught that in school, though, that there's so many things that comes back to education. I know there's parents out there that do educate their kids, but a lot of them don't have time. But they need education about the real world, not just algebra and this and that, you know.
But see, look, I agree in principle with you, Kimmy, but see, the thing is, I don't think you can teach that in the abstract. I think it's something you've got to experience. And I don't think there's any coincidence, because we know that technically, and I mean this technically, like one of my other guests, and he's actually a friend of mine too, he's an epidemiologist, and he studies everyone says that and he thinks COVID. No, he studies the epidemiology around drug use, alcohol misuse, and suicide. And suicide has been a technical epidemic in Queensland for years, like technically an epidemic, not like hyperbole.
And I thought about it. It was at a really low point, but it was one of the most confronting, because you never think, for a person like me, that you would have that thought come into your head. And it's surreal. It's a surreal feeling to get to that point. Not in a good way. It's just the magnitude of it. You can't believe you actually thought like that.
Yeah. I can add to that and say that if Jed was going to leave us, then he was not going to go on his own. And I can step back and look at that in hindsight now and go, wow, that was a really big statement. But, you know, he was my only child, and Peter and I had been through so much heartache and sorrow, and that was the active decision that we'd come to. Fortunately, the other two had come along and said, no, you're staying here with me. So there you go.
Absolutely. And it's like, you know, I'm so glad that you've got through that, and recognizing too. It's funny because, you know, in the police, and, you know, I dealt with this kind of stuff a lot, sometimes even with coppers, actually. Well, surprisingly, a lot with coppers. And I found, speaking to coppers, if a thought like that went through their head, they'd stick a label on it. It's like, oh, you know, I had a suicidal thought. Oh, that means I'm crazy. So this label went on this thought that went through their head. And of course, they thought that, well, in a certain way, that defines me as well. So it's not just a thought, because the thought's in me.
Yeah.
Without understanding that, you know, it's kind of really dangerous to stick a label like that.
Yeah.
You know, on a thought that has implications for your self-image.
Yeah.
But I prefer to call it happy with a twist.
Sorry?
I prefer to call it happy with a twist.
That's a good way. That's what I'm going to call this.
No, that's really bad, isn't it?
That is what I'm going to call it. Right there. Happy with a twist. Okay, but like, I don't think there's any coincidence either that, like, in the Western world, and especially in Australia, like, as our lives actually get better, like, you know, we live in the most comfortable times, the most that have the least amount of challenge and suffering, accepting, you know, extreme sort of stuff like that. And I think that that's contributed to this FML perspective that people have. So again, the funny thing is, and I know, but it's like, you need suffering and challenge. Like, you need it. Your life is not complete without suffering and challenge.
Yeah.
Like, isn't that strange? Isn't it? You know, that's one of the things that I've kind of like, I've come to understand from speaking to all these people that have been through that. You know, you're not the first person that, like, you know, to hear it articulated as clearly and as bravely as like, oh no, I wouldn't change it. It's like, no, not like I'm happy it happened to me. It's like, no, obviously not. But like, you know, the pain was worth the insight was worth the pain.
And the resilience building.
Yeah. And what it says for your character.
That's one question I wanted to ask you, Nick. Do people, because you've been through what you have with Jed and your whole family, do people, and I'm very strong, so I will stand up and be counted, and I'm the first to put my hand up, you know, I'm very strong. And sometimes people think I'm blunt. I come across as blunt because I speak my mind and truth. Do you find that, I haven't got a softer side, of course, but do you find that in general, that people think that you may be harsher?
That's a good question.
That's a really in-depth question, don't you think?
Really good question.
Okay, so if I'm going to really put it all out there, and, you know, as I said, Matt, this is warts and all, I find, if it weren't for my husband and my children and a couple of, you know, key people in my life, because I think people see what I'm doing, they like what I'm doing, but they don't understand the journey that has brought me to this place and the achievements that I'm achieving.
Yeah.
So I find if I'm not the person that drives it, then I'm not there visible, if you know what I mean. So it's really hard to articulate that, but I do struggle with a sense of, sometimes I think, I don't know what people think of me, but maybe they think I'm too busy, or I've got my head up my backside. I don't know what that is, but it's a strange sensation. I've become a very spiritual person, particularly since Nicole died, and she's taught me a lot. I don't think I would be doing the things that I'm doing without her. And I know that there are other people that have been around, but it's like you say, Kimmy, people move on. And that's happened with a lot of people that I didn't necessarily expect to see. And that hurts, you know, it's part of evolving into who you're going to be. And I think that my word for 2024 is evolution, because I'm not that same person that I was all those years ago, and I don't want to be that person anymore. I want to be that person that's there to give back to the people that need it. That is my Moya Moya family. And if people don't understand that, then that's not my issue. It's something I have to find a way to stop it from being incredibly painful, because loss is loss, isn't it? And grief is grief, as I said, but that's my journey, and I'm 100% committed to what I'm doing with myself, because I feel that that's what I'm supposed to be doing.
And I think people say to me, oh, you've changed, especially some of my family members on my side. And I say, yes, I've changed. Everybody changes, not just because I got Moya Moya. As you go through life, you change. But I think more so for me, because I have what I've been through and what you've been through, of course it's going to change.
Yep.
You know, even beside being having Moya Moya, you still change anyway, because you learn different lessons in life. You know?
Yeah.
So and they don't accept, they're not accepting of that.
Yeah. And it
They
comes
want you
back
to
to
stay
that.
that person, you know?
Comes back to that value from grief, doesn't it? There's value there.
There's value in
And
suffering.
only those that have been through it can actually understand, is that important right now? No, it's not important right now. What is important is this. So
You know,
we've all got different perspectives.
There is
From like-
totally value in suffering. And just to even articulate that is a heretical statement right now. Because if you think of how risk adverse we are and how, you know, it's, oh, we got to stop this. It's like, I don't know if that's the right way. And if I can really quickly add, Kimmy, it's like, yeah, I was in the police for 30 years, and
oh wow,
yeah.
that's a long time to see a lot of stuff.
Yeah, and see, yeah, well, you know, a life sentence is 25, so. But yeah, I find I'm phenomenally blunt, and now, like, and I don't mean to, like, in the job that I'm in now, and I can't say what it is on air, but like wonderful people, but a lot of them, and God, if some of them heard this, they're going to be, were you talking about me? It's like they're kind of sheltered, and I don't mean that in a bad way. Like, I really don't mean that in a dismissive, condescending way. I just mean it as an observation that our society really is awesome. Like, we've got food in our guts, we've got roofs over our heads, and yeah, like, you know, our medical system isn't perfect, and stuff is centralized in Brisbane, but it's still there, and there's magnificent people up in Ravenshoe of all places that are setting up all these things. You know what I mean? Life is pretty, I mean, for all the issues, life's pretty good.
Yeah,
so kind of like, you know, and I find that when I articulate, especially what problems are and solutions as I see them, it's like, oh, you're getting judgy. Oh, you're condemning. Oh, you do. It's like, no, dude, I'm coming from the right place. I'm trying to perceive what the issue is, formulate the question, and come up with a response. Because, you know, some of my job is dealing with social issues. Well, actually, all of my job's dealing with social issues. And then it's kind of like, why can't I tell the truth as I see it? Like, you know, because we need to dance around these things. It's a form of self-deception that doesn't help me, doesn't help the people it's supposed to be helping with. It doesn't help anything.
Yeah.
There's nothing more dangerous than self-deception. But look, in regards to the spiritual stuff there, I wouldn't mind diving into that a little bit more. You saw your granddad, Nicola.
I saw my granddad. I did.
Tell us about that.
Okay, so yes, I have seen my granddad. I have become very spiritual. After Jed had just had his first brain surgery, we'd had a really, really bad 12 hours of him being really distressed and pulling out catheters and cannulas, and it was just horrible. I mean, watching his blood pressure shooting up and thinking, is this a stroke, or what's going to happen now? Finally, at about 3:30 in the morning, we'd found the combination of what he needed to be able to help him rest and recover. And so in ICU, they gave me a fold-out bed. And if you've ever been in an ICU ward, then you know that there's no privacy, there's no blinds, you can't hide from anything. There's a nurse at the foot of the bed at all times. And so there I was. It was very early in the morning. I was exhausted and I felt something and I don't know what it was. So I thought, well, you're really tired. Let's just lie here and feel what this is going to feel like. And I actually felt heat on my leg, about my knee high. And I felt that and I thought, I think I know who this is. And I opened myself to it. And actually it was my granddad. He was wearing his favorite shirt. And he was just sitting there looking at me. And I can remember saying, and I don't think I said it out loud. They might have locked me up if I had, but I remember feeling, what are you here for? And he said, I have a job to do. And I think that the job that he had come to do was not to look after Jed or to take him away from me, but was actually to sit there and hold me during probably some of the worst moments of my life. So, that experience I sort of opened up to a little bit. But then after Nicole's accident, she was actually going to take me to see a lady who calls herself the secretary.
Can you really quickly just give some context? I know what you're talking about. Can you tell us about, you're going to have to tell us about Ravenshoe to lead up into that, and then you can walk into that. I'm really sorry, but just for the listeners.
Yep. Okay. So
the Ravenshoe explosion, just run.
Yeah, I'm just usually the story. I'll tell a story how I would usually tell a story, shall I?
Yeah.
With life, you have moments in your life that are either really high or really low. So in the end of November 2015, the high came when we were invited to spend time down on the Movie World movie set with Johnny Depp and the crew and the cast from the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise, which was really exciting for us. We got to hang out with Johnny, who I adore, and we got to do all sorts of magical things. And on that day, I actually gave him a bag of goodies. There he is. Oh, it's Johnny. There's a chicken foot in his hair. You can't actually see it, but it is there. It's just behind his ear there. So there you go. I got to cuddle him because as a good mother, I had to show some appreciation for what he'd done for us.
The hits a girl's got to take.
I know. Johnny Depp, 21.
I mean, no girl wants to cuddle Johnny Depp. What girl wants to cuddle Johnny Depp? But you took that hit right there, sister.
Look, he was lovely, and I took a bag down. I made him one of my special boiled fruitcakes with rum in it, and he said, "Oh, I love rum." He was very happy. But I also put in a bag of fudge made by my friend Nicole. Nicole was a local up here in Ravenshoe. She was a fudge maker, and her parents owned a cafe called the Serves You Right Cafe. And a couple of weeks after I'd returned from that magnificent high, it's well recorded that the cafe was involved in an explosion, and Nicole was in the cafe. And that's when I talk about my experience with her last moments, were that I was able to hold her hand and be calm and say, what can I do to help you? So, I think that life experience of being with Jed and then going to Nicole when she was critically ill, I kept a vigil for her for the rest of her life. And from there on, she's changed me. She was going to take me to see a lady that calls herself the secretary before she died. And after she died, I was quite well reported in the follow on from the explosion. And I didn't want to go and see her because I thought it's easy to look me up. It's easy to see who I am and what I've just been through and tell me something about that. But I wanted to go to her anyway. So my mum actually booked me in to see the secretary and booked in her name. So she didn't know who I was. When I got there, she started talking to me and she started saying things to me that were like, oh, there's a girl in the room. She's got crazy blue hair. She's obsessed with the smell of the candle in the corner. She's got a ball and she's bouncing it. There's a leprechaun at her feet and it's pink. So to know Nicole, she played netball. That was the ball for the leprechauns. They wore pink. She was obsessed with candles. She loved party lights. She used to sell candles because she loved the smells of them. And she had just had a trip where she had had blue hair. So she is always changing the color of her hair. So there was no doubt in my mind who was coming through to me. But then there was another person that came through, and it was an older man. And she said, there's an older man here. He's saying same name, same name, same name, but he's making a capital G. And I thought, oh, okay. So Peter's father was Jed with a G. He passed when Peter was 6 years old. So there's no way she could have looked that up. So nowadays, having been to see the secretary more than once, I understand and I'm at peace with the mark that I'm leaving, because I know that I'm doing everything that I'm supposed to be doing. And I feel in myself that I feel that I'm being guided in a particular way. And I'm really happy to be going in that direction, because it's letting me do the really wonderful things that we do. I feel a lot more forgiveness for things that hurt. I feel a lot more accepting of people who are different to me. And at the end of the day, I want to be a friend to everybody. I love everybody. It doesn't work that way. But if you're nice to me, I'm nice to you. And I forgive you and I hope that you forgive me if things aren't going the way that they should.
Forgiveness, yeah, it's so important. Kimmy, you had something to add?
Not as interesting as Nicole's. I was getting right into that, Nicole. Maybe you should write a book about that.
I have. It's called The Thing About Jed.
I know. But on the mine wasn't quite like Nicole's. It was during my surgery, so my brain surgery, and I don't know if it was during surgery or when I was asleep, but I actually had an out-of-body experience, and I was looking at myself having the surgery up above, and then I did go towards big lights, wherever it was. Wow. And all my family was there, all the ones that had passed on, all my friends, everybody was there that I'd ever known. And they were all just crowded there, and they said, it's not your time, go back. It's not your time. And it was the most peaceful, wonderful feeling to be there, and you didn't want to leave, actually. So whether it was heaven, whether it was another plane, I don't know, but it's wonderful. So, I still am one to pick up feathers when I'm walking along, and one's in front of me. I'm one to pick up money if I see it. They're what's coming down by whoever, whatever. They're still, to me, they're still out there, somewhere.
I get bomb dived by blue butterflies.
Oh, yes, and butterflies.
I know who that is.
So how's this changed your perception of death? Like, is it something to be feared?
Dying.
Sorry?
I'm not scared.
No, I'm not scared of dying either. I think that it's a part of the journey, and I don't think it ends. What it looks like on the other side, I guess I'll find out when I get my passport.
Yeah.
But and we've got no guarantee. We've got no crystal ball to see when that day is going to be. So that's why it's really important. You've got one life. You've got to live the shit out of it.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, no, I'm not scared of death at all. I think that, and I don't think I ever have been scared of death. I think it's just one of those things that I know it happens, and maybe because I've had younger relatives die when I was younger and seen dead bodies, that I thought, family dead bodies, that sounds really awful, doesn't it? That I'm quite accepting of it, and I think it'll be at peace, and I'll go somewhere where, wherever I go, or be a blue butterfly. Oh no, not a butterfly, because they only live 24 hours. Then I could repeat, Nicole, and come back as a butterfly. Birds, and they'll sit there, and kookaburras, willy wagtails, magpies, crows. they'll sit there and look at you, and you could swear that that was that person
Yep.
sitting there looking at you, talking to you, or chirping at you. So yeah.
What's it taught you? Like, what message would you like to pass on to the good listeners of Northern Vibe?
I think for me, accept people for who they are and let them have their own opinions, even if they're different, they look different, they have different opinions. Just accept them for who they are and don't try to change them. And there's so many things, Matt. But yeah, that's the one I think of most is accept them for who they are. And how nice, if they're nice to you, be nice to them.
Nicola?
I would say your moment is now. You're not guaranteed tomorrow. You've got one life. Get out and live it. Live it to the best that you can possibly live it.